Welcome to the Power Exit Podcast. This show is dedicated to business owners who want to scale up, plan smarter, and prepare for the ultimate exit. We'll talk with M&A experts and owners who've been through the process to provide actionable advice so that you can sell your business on your terms and without regret. I'm John Marsh. Join me as we prepare to take control of your exit. All right, Randy, thank you for being here on the Power Exit Podcast. I'm thrilled to have you because you're another advisor, right? You do deals like I do. We met in the past, I think at M&A Source Conference, and have become friends. So thank you for being here as a guest today. I'd love to start with just tell us who you are, how you got into doing deals, and give us a little bit about your background and what led you into the M&A world.
Well, awesome, John. Thank you for the invite. Nice to see you again, and I appreciate the time to kind of hang out and chat with you. Yeah, so I do what you do, work in the M&A space. My 12th year doing what I'm doing. I was in the corporate world before that. I was with Enterprise Rental Cars with them for 24 years. My last 11 of that, I was a regional vice president. I had 45 locations and about 350 employees. Here in California from Sacramento up to Redding, but they retired me in 2011. We had two regions, one here and one down south, and they combined them into one. Took care of me for a few years, which was nice. Ended up having my own business for a while, and then was looking to buy one. John, actually, I was looking to be a buyer, looking to buy one, and I was talking to folks that do what we do, centers of influence like CPAs, advisors, folks like that, looking for a business. And I wasn't super impressed with the M&A broker world. And I thought, I think I could do this better. I ran into a gentleman named Roy, who's been my mentor ever since. And he had been doing it and just recently kind of exited and just decided to do it on my own.
That's great.
So that's how I got into it. Again, 12th year doing it. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy what I was on.
That's so crazy. It's the same story for me. I went to buy a business, and after a couple of months, I was like, wow, I think we could add some value to these business owners who are looking to sell. Yeah, interesting. So you're in California. You now have a growing practice. If I'm correct, you've got your son who's working for you in a different market there in California. Is that right?
Yeah. He just joined us in May. So I'm in Northern California, in Sacramento, and he's in our San Diego office.
Great.
He's bringing to the team 8 years plus of commercial real estate on the industrial side. So a nice background to bring on board, and he's excited. So we doubled our size, John. We have 2 offices now. So.
Well, that's awesome. Growing, doubled. So the point of today's podcast and conversation is to help empower those business owners so that when they are ready to exit their business, they take control of the process and really do it the right way. But before we do that, tell us a little bit about what type of businesses you typically work with, deal size, industries, deal flow, and shifts over time. If you would just kind of paint that picture for us.
Yeah, so we're ideal clients usually about these are general, numbers here, about 2 to 30 million in revenue, kind of size wise. Some bigger, some a little smaller, mostly a little bigger. A little bit of everything as far as type, service, distribution, manufacturing. Don't do a lot on the restaurant side unless it's a bigger processing, food processing type company. But looking for, like as you are, John, looking for good businesses, we think we can help. We can help.
Yeah. And that's always a challenge. Maybe we'll get to that at the end, right? But how we as guys who want to help affect a positive transaction, help affect change. But part of that is, can we work with this person? Do they have reasonable expectations? So, that leads us into the first question, which is, what are the most common misconceptions business owners have when they first consider selling? We could talk for hours about that.
When time do we get got?
Yeah, exactly. But what do you see from your initial conversations with business owners that you really have to spend some time educating?
Yeah, and this certainly isn't any fault of a business owner. They just haven't ever done it, right? This is at least the folks we work with. I'm sure it's the same for you, John. 9.9 out of 10 have done it once, or this is their first time. So they just don't know. They don't know, and I think that's where I kind of take the approach. I think you're the same, John. Let's help educate them. Let's help, get them thinking about things they should be thinking about ahead of time. And that's probably the biggest thing, is having a plan. You're really thinking, 3 to 5 years out. That's the best scenario if you can do it, where you kind of start marching down the getting your advisor team, we could talk more about that, but really having a plan and really putting some thought into it versus a last minute, I'm burned out, get me out kind of call. That is certainly the key, I think as well. And I think I'll give you one more too and I think this is again, back to the beginning point, is understanding what they have. A lot of times they don't. And that's the typical first step we do is let's do a evaluation and just see what you got. You don't have to be selling right now. Let's just see what you got and then kind of go from there. But I think it's all just starts with that, man, if you can do it, 3 to 5 is best in my book.
Yeah, and as I do more and more of these podcasts, I'm sensitive to to the fact that maybe I say the same thing over and over again. But time is on your side, and you really need to be, as a business owner, thinking about what the end goal is, even when you start the business. Um, so there are certain things, and I'm going to use an example on a conversation I had just this week. A gentleman who's got a pest control business. They go spray for pests, residential, commercial, and you know not making a lot of money, $500,000 in seller's discretionary earnings, but he thought, based on his conversations, that his business would sell for a 3 to 4 times revenue multiple.
Yeah.
And God bless him, I hope that happens for him. But at his level, he's going to appeal to buyers who are relying on SBA or bank financing, and that deal doesn't math. It doesn't pencil out. Um, and I don't like delivering that news, right? The other thing I heard this week was somebody said, I don't want to sell or finance anything. I want everything in cash at closing. What are some of the common things that you hear from business owners that are reoccurring themes that keep coming up when you're educating them about what we do?
Um, Having one buyer and kind of thinking that's the way to go. I think that's a very common one. I get that call relatively often. Hey, I got a buyer. Can you kind of help me through it? And kind of again, I think, John, I think a big part of our role is helping an owner really kind of shift their way of thinking to a buyer's point of view. Because that's really all that matters. That, kind of simply put in layman terms, they're the ones writing the check, right? So how are they thinking at your business? So we can help give some stories and kind of educate owners and sellers on, hey, here's how a buyer might look at it, and then kind of go from there. I think that's the piece. So
Yeah.
kind of back to that one buyer though. If they have one buyer, we know that kind of there's some sayings in our industry. Your one buyer is no buyer, but you're losing your leverage. The more buyers, the better. But I think sometimes they just don't understand the process. So again, it's kind of us helping them through it. But again, looking at it from that buyer's lens, I think is super.
That's a great perspective. And, you're my guest, so I don't want to take too much here, but I like talking shop. I was just engaged by a gentleman who's got a fluid control handling system,
Mhm.
manufactures pumps. He's got a buyer. He's been through due diligence with that buyer, and something happened late in the game that broke trust. And he has nowhere else to go. He's got to start the process over. Luckily, he's in this space that is highly desirable. But at 70 something years old, he's tired. And we could have absolutely worked with that one buyer, built that competitive energy. He's got an offer at 7 times EBITDA. That's great.
Well,
But if you look at the data, if you look at closed transactions, it really should be an 8.5 or 9 times deal. And we're going to try to go get that for him. So point there is that one buyer fell through after a year, hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal expenses. I'm confident we're going to help him, but he's tired and it's really hard for him to get going again on it.
yeah, and 2 points there, Don. You can't get the money back, right? That's spent, and you can't get your time back. That's probably even more important. You can't get your time back. So I think it's interesting too when I go through and I kind of work with sellers at the beginning. I try to, we're educating them on the process, right?
Yeah.
And we talk about, price and terms. You can't separate those. They're one together. You got to look at the price and the terms, but you also got to look at the buyer. And as we're going through talking to multiple buyers, a lot of it is who do you feel the most connection with?
Yeah.
And I always liken it to a first date. I was like, hey, we do the first introduction, the first date. If you guys are kind of having some conflicts or kind of bumping heads, it's only going to get worse. It's not going to get any better. So, and having them kind of look at that perspective. And as we talk to multiple buyers, you get more, you're going to have different people. So who do you feel like, and you can't guarantee anything with those initial calls, but you can get a pretty good gauge
Yeah.
on who they are and what their background is. So I think, again, helping the seller kind of look at it from that perspective, I think helps.
Well, and let's double down on that or keep going down that path. we as advisors, part of our job is to help our clients get the right fit. And it's really hard because sometimes in this process, you're getting married before you have a chance to really date and get to know those folks. So, we try to help get some comfort on how the buyer will act post closing. And we do that by calling references, other deals. What advice do you have to business owners who, are trying to find the fit?
As far as if they're looking on their own or just
Yeah,
posting them
or even if they're working with us, if they have a buyer and they've got two separate offers on the table, how do you choose one? There's no perfect science here.
No, but that's a great question. Some of it's gut. I think some of it's gut, but I think it's, asking some good questions, kind of figuring out, really goes back down to what's the motivation for the seller? What's important to them? I find most of the time there's a legacy component, right? It's certainly the funds and the money is important, yes. But that's not everything. So there's a legacy component. So as you're working with the buyer, them individually or their team, are they going to fit your goals the most? I think it's really kind of trying to identify what your goals are first, and then kind of going up from there. But again, it's not just one thing. It's not just one thing. That's right. And I'll hear that that comment out the gate. Well, I want this much money for my. That's what I want. It's like, okay, let's walk through and kind of look at the whole picture. I kind of some folks, I'll give them a scenario. I go, yes, I understand the price is important, but you got to look at the terms. And I do a little joke with them. I was like, I'll give you $20 million for your business, but I'll pay you $20 a month. Like, so the price is great, but the terms are not there. So just kind of try to illustrate the point. There's a lot to the whole process. How long do they want you on board? How much is the buyer coming in? Are they investing in, really kind of working on the transition, all those
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And, I want to kind of pivot to what's our role in the process. What's the role of an M&A advisor in the process? You mentioned, that situation and private equity is approaching these owners at record levels. They're sitting on tons of cash. So owners think, oh, the M&A advisor is only there to find the buyer. Right? And that's a common misconception. How do you explain your role to a client? You've touched on it a little bit, but it's more than just finding a buyer and negotiating the deal.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, that certainly is work and packaging the business and really kind of putting everything together to kind of tell their story. But the real work comes in once we find one, right? Once we've kind of been find one, we've got engaged and we have a signed, LOI, and we've agreed on price and terms, going through the due diligence piece. I think that's where we earn our keep. That's where we earn our fees, is when issues pop up. And I know you and I are on the same page. As I'm beginning to work with a seller, I'm trying to look as far down the road as I can and iron out as many wrinkles as I can. We're not going to iron them all out. It's not possible. But if I see things where we can do things ahead of time that'll make it better on the transaction, we're trying to do that. But when those wrinkles come up, that's where we come and try to figure out solutions, or we've got a trusted network of people that we can rely on to help us find those solutions. I think that's where we really, based on our history too, kind of seeing, well, I saw this before, this is how we did it. But bringing different ideas to the table, I think that's a lot of what we do. It's always interesting though. And I'm sure you hear the same thing, John. When you get done, this phrase comes up quite often. Wow, we passed the finish line, we closed, and the seller goes, "Man, Randy, I had no idea. I had no idea what was involved." And it's almost kind of hard to explain to a point everything, but because there's so much, we'll get that down to that, especially that last 30 days or so. I mean, we're talking to sellers almost daily, correct? I mean, it's almost daily. Right. Then you get to that close part. I've had this comment too. It's like, so are we not going to talk anymore? I know, right? You can, but not the same pace. This kind of buddy.
Yeah, there's a lot. I don't love that about our role, right? We get the deal done and then we kind of go away. They don't need us anymore. The buyer definitely doesn't want us involved. They probably don't want us involved, period. But
No.
you know, actually on that situation where I mentioned that buyer has a deal and it fell through, we are re-engaging with that buyer. And
But yeah, okay.
they are so thrilled that there's an M&A advisor involved because it can help educate our client on some of the things. But, you know, how much of our job is technical versus emotional? And let me give you a little bit of, I tell my clients, I get a phone call from a buyer and it's an issue. I'm going to wait 24 hours before I take that to my client. Oftentimes, the issue calms down, or we've had a chance to reflect, and I can go to them with not only the problem, but also potential solutions. Deals die like a cat 9 times before they close. So let you answer the question I asked, which is how much is emotional versus technical, or how often are you putting on your psychologist hat?
I think half. I would say half. And I find this is interesting too. It goes back to your advisor team. Many times sellers don't have someone they can confide in or have these kind of tough, interesting conversations with. They just haven't had it. They're the boss. They've kind of they're at the top, so everything comes up to them versus having, and some do, some have networks and different CEO groups and things like that. But it's a small, in my book, it's a small percentage that have that. So they don't really have that resource. They haven't had that resource. So I think we kind of end up taking on that resource because I've heard, I'm sure you have too, some really personal things that they just felt comfortable sharing,
Yeah.
about family or whatever it is. Because we're just kind of in a bit of a vulnerable moment there. Because it's huge, big baby. We know it's their baby they've built up over 20, 30, 40 years. And there's a lot of things that come out. So I think it's half. And I think that's part of just, listening. Really got to listen and kind of understand where they're coming from. And all those things really add up to gonna help them get where they wanna go, because they're all gonna have a little bit different on what they wanna accomplish.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we've had clients, grown men cry. We've been yelled at. It's an emotional process, and we're there to help weather the storm, and get the client to.
Yeah, I remember I had a husband-wife team where the husband got a little heated a couple times, and the wife would call me up and apologize for him. "Well, fuck you." Like, "It's all right. It's all good. I understand. It's tough. It's hard."
Yeah,
Uh,
and
so it's all good.
one of the things that I'd like to hear your opinion on, but we're also oftentimes the behind the scenes advocate for the client. We're also the bad guy when the seller doesn't have to be. We do go away at the end of a transaction. And oftentimes I tell my client it's okay. And if at the closing dinner, the buyer says, gosh, John Marsh, he was really hard to deal with. And that way I'm the bad guy. We've preserved the relationship with the buyer and the seller because sometimes they're rolling equity, they're staying on, there's a contingency that require consulting, whatever it may be. Um, I'm not afraid to be that bad guy, and advocate for the client. I don't know if there's a question in there, but any thoughts or anything to add?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. At the end of the day, though, we know, John, there is not gonna get done unless it works for both sides.
Yeah,
Right? Like, it's not gonna happen, so our goal is to figure out where that is, and sometimes it doesn't, and it's rare. And if we're doing all the steps we can do, you don't want that to happen, but sometimes it does, it's rare.
yeah,
But it's really to figure out where those things are, and sometimes we have to do that to kind of figure out where the lines are. We
yeah,
don't know until you kinda get there. I think to a point, sometimes maybe a buyer or seller don't know that either. They're kinda not sure which way they wanna go, and they gotta, kinda marinate. I like your let it sit for a minute. It's back to that count to 10 rule, right?
yeah.
'Cause let's try to eliminate the emotions part of it and just be kinda realistic, but
I
that's
wish I could take credit for that, but that came from a mentor as well. I would call him early in my career and, "No, I'm stressed about this," and he goes, "John, wait 24 hours. See if it's a big deal then." And,
well, no, that's a good point too, John. I mean, we have our mentors and our folks that help as well because and you and I belong to a few groups like this where it's a lot of work to get a deal across the finish line. So having a brain trust that we can rely on to say, "Hey, I've got this scenario. Have you seen something similar?" Obviously, we're not giving out who's who, but we're just rolling scenarios by. It's super helpful. I mean, there's so many moving targets and pieces. To have a brain trust we can rely on is a big. I know we do that nationwide, right? We've got folks we work with
yeah.
across.
Well, and I don't wanna, but I feel like you and I are some of the good ones, right? We are not the guys we ran across when we were trying to buy a business. So and we don't have all the answers. We're gonna sure as heck get the answers for you, but that's where that take a solution to our client, not just a problem. Um, can you think through a specific situation where your involvement really changed the outcome for a client? Maybe a deal that fell apart and how you saved it, creative structuring, anything like that?
Yeah, I had a I have a couple ideas I think I could share with you, John. That's a little more on the proactive side, only just to kind of tag on to our initial theme, kind of starting out the gate. Where I've had conversations with sellers, and I think you're probably the same, where there's times where I'll talk to a seller, years, and then they end up and decide they eventually want to sell. which is fine. But I one was at a food processing company that I talked to in July of 17, so a long time ago. But we sold last year, and just started talking about what's important and all that. And one of the things was customer concentration. So we really dug into that one and said, hey, kind of the benchmark is you can keep it within 10 to 15% for any one client. They had a wholesale component to the company. That's the best. And he listened and he took it to heart, and he didn't have one client over 10%. And we got to the closing table, and we're going through the due diligence process. The buyer, obviously was a box checker. That's all good. So I think just kind of helping folks be proactive is a big deal. I have another one I'm working with right now. It's a contracting company, and kind of back to that, if the owner is the business, we haven't really touched on that, but if the owner is the business, how that can be challenging. And I've been chatting with him for 2.5 years, and he's got some VPs in place. So he's been working on that. So he's working on him stepping away so he can do less and they're doing more. And hopefully we're going to engage with them coming up in the fall. But
Great.
Those are, I guess, kind of setting the tone, kind of helping, educate folks on how the process works.
Yeah, no, that's key. We do an opinion of value, complimentary opinion of value, showing what we think a business is worth. Now they have to be at a prospect that we would want to work with. But do you do exit consulting like that group that you just referenced in 2017? He had a customer concentration. Were you charging him for work between now and then, or were you?
Yeah, good question, John. No, I do the same thing. I do an initial evaluation. Let's just see what you got. With that client, we did one, I think we did 3 over the years before he sold, 3 valuations. I have an appraiser that I use a third-party appraiser. I have a couple of them. It's like a quarterback pull process. And I don't charge for that, John. I probably should, but I don't do consulting. So I'm just more or less having general conversations. If they need someone, I've got, trusted advisors in my network I can, refer them to, whether it's HR, CFO type work, whatever it is. But I guess I've taken the approach, I want to help. And you mentioned it earlier, those lousy phone calls, right? Where you get the call and they're just not in the right spot. I don't want that. So I don't know, call, pay it forward. I'm here to help. I'm not doing any kind of, weekly, monthly check-in like a consultant would, not at all. But I'm helping point kind of bring up the tough topics or the bigger topics that can have a big impact to help their mindset and then go from there.
Yeah, that's we're very similar in our practices. It's a long game we play, and in fact, I'm still getting used to how long it could take. But yeah, I mean, I feel similar to you. I was put in this position to help people, and this is how I serve. So yeah, happy to do it.
Back to lousy, I do the same thing. I call it the lousy phone call. They're terrible. I don't like. And so all my business comes in from referrals, from advisors and such. And so I just have the conversation with them. You just ask them the question. Ask your owners the question. Do you have a plan? Have you thought about it? You don't have to have a solution for them. Just get them thinking about it.
Yeah,
it's important.
Yeah, day one. I mean, yes, every business will transition, and it's hopefully not through death, through disability, through divorce, or one of the 5 Ds.
That's a proven stat, right? 100% of business owners will exit. Some point to.
Yes. So when we've talked about this, when you think a business owner should start preparing for a sale, but what should they be focusing on? And, clean books, owner dependency are some examples, but what other things in your mind should a business owner be focusing on as they prepare for a sale?
Some of the big ones, I think being a student of the process is super important too. So the more that they can learn about how the whole process works, there's a number of levers that pull up and pull down value, right? So that's why I recommend doing the valuation out the gate. Let's go through that. Let's educate you, give you as much information as we can as we finish the valuation. There's going to be 2 big things that come out of that. One, the obvious, what's the benchmark price or a potential listing price? But to me, what's more important is why. So as we can help educate the seller why a business is valued where it is, then they can start figuring out what they need and their deal team and who they might need to kind of go from there. So I think that's a big part of it is being a student and understanding what levers are. By far, most sellers gravitate towards bottom line profit. That's going to drive value. And it does. But there's a lot of other levers. So that we can kind of, as we go, I tell them, like, as we go through the evaluation, I'm going to learn a lot too. I don't know everything about your business. I'm going to learn a lot too. Then I can give you some thoughts. And just my opinion from what I see, I'll give you thoughts on, good. This area over here, it could create a challenge because we know how buyers are thinking, right? So we know what their thought process is. And I think that's a big part of it, is that. And one other big one that comes up quite often, I'm sure you see it too, is back to the whole customer concentration. So if we identify that, I've had clients where they have half the revenue from one customer. Well, back to the point, if you've got 3 to 5 years of planning time, maybe you can do something about that. Super easy for you and I to say, fix that, hard to do. But if you have a runway, you got some time now.
Yeah, exactly. If you have a runway, you have time. That's the key right there.
Yeah. Dan, I think one other thing as far as with sellers planning, and I call it chapter 3, what are they going to do post-close?
Yeah.
I've come, I don't know, other people probably do the same thing. Chapter 1, childhood. Chapter 2, your career, business. Chapter 3 is retirement. And we all need, purpose, structure, and identity. And I've just watched many times, I've watched sellers actually not decide to close because they don't know what they're going to do in chapter 3. And that's hard. You got to have something. Of my opinion, I don't think I couldn't play golf 5 days a week. Maybe there's a small percentage that can. But what are you going to do? Is it nonprofit work? Consult? What is it? What are you going to wake up every day and do? And I've just heard a lot of stories too from folks that have sold or retired, and they're miserable because they don't have kind of a daily thing. So anyway, I think that's a worthy topic to kind of ask the question on.
Thank you for adding that. It's a wonderful point. That was where I was going next, was the financial readiness versus the emotional readiness.
Yeah.
You touched on the emotional readiness. One of the things that I'm constantly shocked about is that these folks who are looking at retirement, it's near term for them, don't have an idea what they need financially to retire.
Yeah.
We do a lot of education when we'll do the valuation as well, but then we'll show a hypothetical funds flow. So let's say you're selling your business for $20 million. Shockingly, you'll have to pay the government some of that money or back to.
It is not fair.
It's not fair, right?
No, as for doing well.
Yeah, but also nobody's going to pay you all cash for that. There's going to be a net working capital adjustment. There's going to be transaction fees. There's all types of things that they haven't thought about. And I get it. We don't do that. They don't do that as a full-time job, but understanding the structure of a transaction, what the tax implications are, is often missed, just completely missed. I want to change the topic to something that you've hit on before, and that's the advisory team. And from my perspective, I won't answer the question for you, but a key member of that advisory team is a financial advisor who specifically deals with business owners. Because there are certain things we can do or they can do, setting up trusts, et cetera, to minimize the tax burden. We're not going to avoid taxes. We don't want to send anybody to jail, but there are legal things you can do that take a lot of time to set it up prior to an exit. Who, from your perspective, Randy, is key for a business owner to have on that deal team?
Yeah, certainly the financial advisor, like you said. And again, with everyone I think we mentioned as far as the deal team, that they're experienced in transactions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, an attorney that does deal transactions, not the divorce attorney or the real estate attorney, but they need to be focused on knowing and dealing with deal transactions. Certainly the CPA, but I think on the CPA front, and I'm sure you see this too, not just a CPA that flips tax returns, and that's pretty common. Do you have a strategic CPA? Do you have someone that is looking that you meet with? They should be meeting with their CPA in my book, 3, 4 plus times a year, figuring out their strategies and all that. I think that's super important too. If they have if they don't have a CFO, some kind of outsourced CFO kind of person, I think is super helpful too. And that to me kind of ties into the sellability side. Having nice tight books is great. If you can go to the next level and have, a process or, a keyboard, not a keyboard, but a data, a dashboard rather, that gives you data that helps you make decisions.
Yeah.
That's great for running your business, but also from the buyer's lens, if they're looking in and you can explain to him why things happen, that helps them buy into more about what they're buying. So I think kind of having those things all together, not just at the end, at the beginning, as you're planning, I think is as important.
Yeah, those are all great points. One of the things that we say, and it's a joke, but true is, attorneys and landlords can kill deals.
Really? Yeah.
So, having someone, as you pointed out, who's got specific M&A experience, who does deals across all those functions is important. I don't want the guy who's managing my mom's 401k or my grandmother's, annuity, advising my business owner clients unless that's a part of their practice.
And I think on the attorney side there, this is a sensitive topic too, is working with one that is focused on getting the deal done. Yeah. There's a balance there. The seller needs to be protected 100%. But is everyone kind of figuring out, okay, what's it going to take to get it done? Here's the hurdle. I always use the peel back the onion thing. When we have hurdles, there's a reason, right? And sometimes we just need to peel it back and figure out, what it is, and whether it's on the buyer or sell side. Here's the thought process, and the other side goes, oh, okay. And then we just need the attorney to kind of help draft to kind of get us to the right spot. But are we thinking of how to get it done versus that's a roadblock? I guess that's the kind of one I think that's most beneficial.
Well, and we're not going to win on every point.
No.
There is something that is, the saying is down the fairway or down the middle or fair. We're not going to win on every single point, and we're not going to negotiate all of the risk out of a deal. A buyer's not going to let us do that. We're going to share the risk on certain points. So it's finding that middle ground. And to your point, moving forward to close rather than putting up roadblocks and hurdles and trying to win on every point. That's not realistic.
If one side's winning, it's not going to get done.
Yeah.
Right. So we can't have it. Win is when both sides win. It's not when it starts getting lopsided. It's not going to happen. I mean, that's what we're trying. Is there some common ground that's going to work? That's a great point, John.
That's right. Okay, so a couple more questions. One is about the recent changes in what buyers are looking for and how deals are being structured. What are you seeing in today's environment?
Yeah, interesting. Had some conversations at some recent conferences. M&A sources is one. Actually, I've been a couple there is asking the same question. Because I asked the question, we're meeting with private equity groups or investment, family offices and such. What are you looking for? And I find that the answer has been coming back probably the last 6 to 8 months, maybe longer. Essential businesses. I'm hearing that a lot. Kind of there's some concern about the economy and where it's going. And we've been hearing that for a while. So I hate to use the word COVID, but in COVID, there was the essential businesses that were open and kept going. I think a lot of buyers, at least at that level, or that type of buyer, is looking at that. The essential businesses out there. So guess what we're looking for, John?
Yeah, exactly. So, mission critical is another buzzword that where applicable, we like to put it in our teasers and marketing materials. Yeah.
And I think we hear a lot of the same ones. We love a business with recurring revenue. Having a management team that's all in place, and I love to have that. The owner not doing it, and those are great. There's not as many of those out there. I mean, yeah. If you have a business that's project based, if you can somehow move part of it to recurring, will be fantastic. But it's hard. A lot of times I think folks are looking for that ideal business, and it just doesn't exist. I always tell folks, I tell sellers, there's no such thing as a perfect business, and there's no such thing as a perfect buyer. They don't exist. So you just got to kind of think about that.
Well, how many times a month do you get an email or a phone call from a buyer who says, I'm looking for something that has reoccurring revenue, historical positive cash flow, no customer concentration, and with significant amounts of owner financing? And my response is oftentimes, yeah, I want to buy that business.
Yeah, exactly. You gotta toss in the absentee owner. Like, I go, same there. Like, yeah, me too. If you're absentee and you have all those things, why are you gonna sell? You're not.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, Randy, you've been a great guest. I'm thrilled to have you on the Power Exit podcast. There are two things I want to wrap up with, and we've covered a lot of different things here. This is an unfair question, but if you could give one piece of advice to a business owner who's thinking about selling in the next couple of years, what would it be?
The same one. It's the easiest one. Plan. I mean, it's the simplest one. There's so many things, but plan. If you're planning, you should be reaching out to other people to help you plan, and that's going to create the other plans, right? That's going to create the other action steps for you. Plan. Plan. And you never know when something out of your control is going to pop up where you find yourself where exiting is more important now than it was. Health. Maybe it's a family member, and then all of a sudden you're in a spot where maybe you wanted to stay around for longer, but you really can't or want to talk about that. But if you got your plan, you're much more likely going to end on the part that you.
Yeah. And the final question here is, what does a successful exit look like in your mind? For us, we talk about exiting on your terms without regrets.
Yeah. Mhm.
There's a lot more to it, but from your perspective, what does a successful exit look like for a business owner?
Well, I was kind of gonna go down that path, 'cause I beat that planning drum so hard, but it's so huge. But you're gonna do exactly what you just said. Do you want to exit on your terms, or do you want to have someone else kind of dictate and get you maybe part of the way there?
Yeah.
But I think it's really simply put, what are your goals? Because that's all I want to know. What are your goals? What do you want to accomplish? What's most important? And then let's figure out how to find the best buyer to fit and match up with those goals. But if you haven't identified those goals, it's hard to kind of know where you're paddling, which way you go. And yeah, so I think that's a key piece is, kind of really having a mission. And back to that legacy piece. I mean, most sellers they've got a team, and it's also interesting. When you sell, you really don't want to talk about the sell till you're done, and sellers, feel like they're cheating, right? They're like, I can't. But you want to take care of your team there. So the better the plan inside, you're going to take care of the folks that really helps you get to where you want to go.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Randy, thank you for being here today. Would you mind telling the listeners where they can find you on the name of your firm, website, email, that kind of stuff?
And thank you, John. I appreciate it. I think we're on the same mindset. The more we can kind of help educate, get folks kind of thinking about it, the better, right? Yeah. So again, Randy Hendershot. My company is Evolution Advisors. Our website is ebobizsales.com. I'm sure we'll have it in the
Yeah,
sure enough there. But we've got our website, 2 locations, Northern California in Sacramento, and then one down in San Diego.
awesome. Well, Randy, thanks so much. I look forward to seeing you in Phoenix at the M&A Sort Conference. And yeah, thanks for being here today.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Take care.